Hi, everybody. Welcome. So, have you often wanted a technique or a method for quick and easy binding for small projects so that you don't have to do the normal binding strips and folding and pressing and sewing them together at an angle and all of that? You just wanted something that could be done quick and easy? Then you're in the right video because that's what this video is about today. Quick and easy binding tip for small projects or smaller quilts. Now, you could use this on a larger quilt, but I think it would be kind of ungainly. So I have used it on projects as big as 36 by 36, and then everything else I just do traditional binding on. And that is the technique I want to show you today. You might have seen my shorts video recently where I talk about this, but some of you asked, could I kind of demonstrate it and show it in a little more detail? And I'm glad to do that. And that's what we will be doing today. So why don't we go ahead and bring up my camera and bring it up as our main piece. And let's talk about some tools that I like to use when I'm doing this technique. You're going to need to have some sort of a quilting ruler that has at least a 1/4 inch mark on it. Okay. And that's pretty easy. I like to have a turning tool. I really like this R&K one because of this ball on the end. It's not going to punch through quite as easily, and I get a nice turnout with that. So any kind of um, uh, corner turner or fabric turner that has a ball like that will be great. Try to stay away from things with sharp ends. You always end up going through the fabric, and that causes you to have to take everything apart. And then I like to use these little snips. Now, you might have seen snips like this before, like this one that has uh, the little short points and a little bit of a curve. These are great as well. So if you have those, perfect. But I like these because this little hook here gets right under stitches that you might want to take out and clips just those stitches right up next to the fabric. I really like these. And this is really easy on the hand, this little squeezing mechanism for holding them. And then a really good pair of embroidery scissors or applique scissors. You all know that I really love the Karen K. Buckley because of that micro serrated edge. Any micro serrated edge will work great, I'm sure. I just happen to like these. Now, I am not being sponsored by any of these companies. These are just tools that I use and I wanted to share because you will need these types of tools for the technique, okay? So I'm going to show you this little mat. It can be used as a coaster, a hot pad, for a smaller item, anything like that. And this binding technique is the technique that I love to use on these kinds of smaller projects, or maybe a slightly larger table topper or a small wall hanging. I love this for that. And it's super easy. So I've got a couple things to show you as we demonstrate. So here I have a block that I have pieced in the hoop of my embroidery machine. And I have actually stitched it onto this backing fabric, but you could just give a little spray adhesive, temporary spray adhesive, like a 505 or a June Taylor, something like that. And then put that on there. And you want to make sure that your backing fabric is 1 to 1.5 inches beyond the edge of your project on all 4 sides. Now, why 1 inch or 1.5 inches? That will determine how wide your binding is going to end up being. Here I used 1.5 inches and I ended up with this nice little binding. On the one I'm going to show you today, I did 1 inch, so I'm going to end up with a slightly smaller binding. So that's really, it's like when we do bindings on our full quilts. Do you like to use a 2 1/4 inch strip, a 2.5 inch strip? You know that that will create the width of your binding when everything is folded together. Well, it's the same here. So 1 inch to 1.5 inches. For your starter project, I recommend 1.5 inches just so you have that little bit of extra. So then you're going to take this and place it on your machine or hand quilt it or place it back on the hoop of your embroidery machine. Do whatever you're going to do to quilt this, just like we see in this sample. I just did all of this quilting on my embroidery machine, and I can see it now. You can see that I have stabilizer on here because I forgot to put my stabilizer in between my layers. So here, this one is actually better to look at. It's not quite finished yet because I'm going to show you how to finish it with that. But you can see there's all the beautiful quilting. But if you don't want quilting on your smaller piece, then do what I did. I just sewed it right onto my backing fabric, right on this sewn line. I just sewed it on all the way around, and that makes keeps it in place. So once you've quilted or not, then this is the part where we're going to start making our actual binding. So if you've already got it to your inch or inch and a half, that would be step one. If you need to trim it down to the inch or inch and a half on all four sides, go ahead and do that. And that's where you're going to need your ruler, and you're going to need your rotary cutter, any 45 millimeter rotary cutter. Now, what we're going to want to do is, let me see, how do I want to think about this for a moment? Yes, okay. So what I want to do is I want to find a line somewhere on my ruler, a 1/4 inch, and I want to place that 1/4 inch line right on the edge of my actual block. So there is my 1/4 inch, and I'm laying it right there. And then what I want to do, so that 1/4 inch runs through that line right there. I want to take and make sure that that line runs from the center of this edge all the way through the center of that edge. That will make sure that I'm going to cut at the right angle, because then I'm going to take my rotary cutter. Now I'm not going to cut this one, but I'll show you what you one that is cut. You're going to take and cut that edge off right there. And you're going to do that on all four corners by lining your 1/4 inch up in the center right there, making sure that that line comes all the way down to the center on the other side. And then you would cut, and you would do that on all four sides. And you end up with your piece looking like this. Do you see how it's cut away from the edge? Now, the next thing you're going to want to do is to take your fabric and fold it in so that it is folded into the edge of your block, just like you're seeing here, and press that. And press it really, really quite well. I would press this again. This has been pressed and repressed, but I would make sure and get a really flat press all the way around your block. So do this side, then bring in this side and do it, and the third side and the fourth side. Then there's something you're going to do with the corners. You're going to take and fold your block in half on the diagonal, and make sure that your folded fabric stays folded. And then you're going to take this to your sewing machine, and you will need to be able to measure. Now, if you don't have a 1/4 inch foot, that's okay. You can just come in here with your ruler. That's a 1/4 inch right there from the outside. So I could take my pen or pencil and just mark that line there. And that way you don't have to use a 1/4 inch foot for that process. But once that's done, I'm going to take it to my sewing machine, and I am going to sew from this edge to this edge. And sometimes I even go back a little bit too, but you're going to sew that right there. And it's going to end up looking like we see here. Okay, so you can see if I fold this in half, there is, I'm going to hold this up a little better because I feel like my camera is a little high for you. So there's my stitch, there's my leftover. Now, what I like to do next is I could just fold this through, press it through, and then try to hide this bulk underneath. But I don't like to do that because that's going to be a really bulky section for me to have to sew over later, and you might see it. So while it's still in half, I come in and I trim just a little bit off of the point. So here you can see it with the point still on. And on this side, I cut just a little bit of that off. Then you're going to take your edges and you're going to fold them over and give them a little press out. Now, I didn't catch my fabric there when I pressed it, so I'm going to hold that together. But when you do that, let's show you actually on one where I did it properly. When you fold that over, you're going to end up with mitered corners. So if you don't like the folded over look and all of that bulk, and really why do that when you don't have to, you can still end up with beautiful mitered corners. So you fold your corners over. I like to use a few fabric clips along the edges to hold this down, and then take it back to your machine. And I just stitch this binding down right on my sewing machine. I don't mess around with doing the binding by hand. If you want to, you certainly can. But then I just come in here with a matching thread that matches my quilting, and I come up as close to as I can to my edge, and I just stitch all the way around. And I like using a 3.0 stitch length. It gives it a little bit more of a hand look, and it helps match out that look on the quilting itself. And then you have a completely completed little mat or smaller project. In fact, the small projects that you see of mine that are bound are all bound in this method if they're not a full-size quilt, because it's just so quick and easy. So let's review again. We've got our square, we've done our quilting. It might be quilted through to the back or not, depending on the method you like. And you've trimmed this all down to an inch to an inch and a half away. So if I just fold this in and fold it in again, you're going to see I'm going to get a really nice wide binding. That might be a little too wide for something this small, but for a bigger project, it would be fine. Or I could fold it in again just to show you. That's if I used an inch, my binding would look like that. So you can see that there is a difference in the size, depending on if you use the inch or the inch and a half. So you've done that trimming. You're going to, now this is the part I want to walk you through again. I want you to take your 1/4 inch mark on your ruler, place it right on the edge of your block. Now I always trim my blocks like this to get bulk out of those corners. And I'm going to place that 1/4 inch mark right there in the center. And this line that comes through that 1/4 inch, I am going to follow it down and make sure it comes through the middle on this edge as well. That way I know that when I cut here with my rotary cutter, this is going to be at the proper angle to give me my mitered edge when I sew and turn. Then once I'm done with all of that, I'm going to take and fold in my fabric and press it on all 4 sides. And then I'm going to take and fold on the diagonals and come in and stitch a 1/4 inch from the edge in, and then give that just a wee little bit of a trim. Then I can fold it under. Let's go ahead and do this side. And so what I like these for is if I need to get in here and clip away any little fraying pieces, any little mini threads, I can get in there and get right under. See, there's a little bit of thread, and get right under there and clip that right out. I like that. And then I can use my good serrated scissors, and I can come right in here and just snip a bit of that off, just like that. And now I can turn, and I'll press this through with my turning tool. And what I like to do with my turning tool is I like to place it in, and I don't push with it. I place it in, and then I roll the fabric around the point with my other hand. That way I'm controlling the pressure with this hand and I'm not adding pressure with my turning tool. That helps me from running my turning tool all the way through. And then I'll fold this over, and you can see I made this one a wee bit short, but that's okay. And then I'll go around and stitch it down on all four corners. And I end up with a lovely little matted piece that's all bound. And trust me, whether you're doing it on a smaller piece or a larger piece, it's really easy to do. And I love it. It is my absolute favorite way to do binding on smaller pieces. So let's take down this block. This is our supplement A block for the month of April, the album block. We're going to remove that. So I'll show you here on our Ohio Star. There we go. On this Ohio Star, that was all bound in the same way that I just showed you the binding here. This block over here, the crossover star, it is bound that way as well. You can see the same fabric on the back, and that's how I did that binding. And that saves me from having to cut more fabric. It saves me from having to maybe buy a different fabric. So I just make sure that my backing fabric is the fabric that I would want to use for my binding. And there you go. So pretty easy to do that. I hope you all enjoyed our quick and easy binding for small projects. Please let me know if you've tried this or if you try it in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. If you want the free block of the month, I'll just remind everyone, whoops, that's not the one. Oops, I think I accidentally got rid of my, I deleted it. Hold on, let me add this in here really quick. On the fly, as they say. If you want the free block of the month, just go to our website, sewincommon.com. You can get the free block of the month for every month during the month or during the year of 2023. And the album block, which is our first supplemental block for the month of April, that free design sheet is there as well. You will need the April block of the month design set so that you can get the files. But the design sheet for the album block will give you the information you need to make this, how many of each one you make, and a layout template, all of that for placement. All righty, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today and taking a look at this video. And until next time, go make yourself some small projects. I love having small projects like this because I can hang them up in the hall. I have this perfect little spot, so I can change those little block table toppers and stuff out. I can throw this on the top of a table for a center. And I love blocks like this because it's got a perfect place right in the center for me to set something. Or if I wanted to, I could even put an applique or stitch out a saying or something on your embroidery machine before you do your quilting in the center, something like that. They make great little gifts as well. Maybe make one with a family's name in it and give that to them as a welcome gift if they bought a new home or something like that, or moving into their first home, even if their first home is an apartment or something. I know my husband and I loved gifts like that when we first got married, which was 41 plus years ago now. So those kinds of things become heirlooms for families. So give those little gifts out and you will, of course, be sewing life beautiful. Bye, everybody. See you all soon. Thanks for joining me.